start. Okay, so I call this May 25th COC meeting to order at 5:31. Let's have roll call.
Kingston Cole,
Here.
Larry Chu. Hi, Larry.
Larry.
It's okay. Lucy.
Yeah.
Dilworth.
Yeah.
Rebecca Suggs.
Here.
Jennifer Howard.
Here.
Pat Randall.
Here.
And for the record, Larry Minikis and Michael Wara and Max Perry are all absent. Thank you. Marie, I guess it is.
It's Parade
Hooray.
with an
Okay.
accent aigu. Okay.
Hooray. Hooray. Hooray.
I'll shut up now. It's okay.
So we move on to agenda adjustments. Does anybody request any changes? I think it's a very simple agenda, but
Well.
okay. Then we move on to open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the Citizens Oversight Committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Is there anyone there who might like to speak?
At
No.
this time, there's no one in the audience at this time. Thank you.
Unless any of you have someone sitting behind you that wants to make a public comment.
So that means I don't have to open each agenda item and say, is there any public comment? Because there is no public at this point.
You still kind of have to.
I still, okay,
Got to go through the motions.
all right. So we move on to the executive officer's report.
Good evening, and I'll be super brief. I think you all know, you're all connected well enough with whether it's Pulse Point or other feeds that we're seeing a little bit of initial attack in the county of Marin, little fires here and there. Fortunately, they're staying little fires here and there, but those are one of those things that firefighters pay attention to, is how frequent initial attack, when initial attack starts and how frequent they are. So I would say that this is kind of average for this time of year, given the fuel conditions. One thing something I did predict, and I'm not happy I was right, but when we had our board meeting just last week, the fuel moistures were at average levels. And I figured that we would have a very precipitous fall of the fuel moistures in line with other months that we've had where it got dry. And I just looked at the fuel moistures just before the meeting, and they had that precipitous fall. And they're now, when they were at just below average a week and a half ago or so, they're now at historic lows. So that's just gives you an indication how stressed these fuels are. So again, not to prognosticate, but the fuel conditions are there for us to have another fire season like we had last year. And there's and I mentioned this a lot because I think the way he said it was great. Director Pimlott of CAL FIRE, just before he retired, and was on 60 Minutes, and he said, there's no reason to believe there's going to be any change to the current wildfire environment that we see right now. And to me, I interpret that as that wasn't where it was stopping. I think he was talking about that curve, the exponential curve that we're seeing in the increase of wildfire behavior. However, I don't want to be a fear monger, and Jennifer, I hope you don't mind me stealing your line. But she told me the other day, the more she learns, the less she's afraid. And so, and I think there's a lot behind that. And I'm going to continue to steal that line, Jennifer. I hope you don't mind. Because the more people know, the more work they can do around their homes, the more they can be prepared for evacuations. And when if and when the time comes to evacuate, being prepared, being knowledgeable allows you not to be in a panic mode. And people do so much better when they're not in the panic mode. And I have, maybe I've told you guys this story. I have two conflicting experiences. The first time my neighborhood was evacuated, the evacuation itself was a disaster, let alone the
But
disaster of the fire. People running into each other, crashes, and just mayhem. And then when we had the evacuation in 2020, it was orderly. There were no car accidents, and it worked really well because people were much more prepared and they weren't making panic decisions. So I love the idea that the more we educate people, the more knowledgeable they become, the less scared they can become and make wise decisions. Yeah, I'm sure most of you were at our board meeting as we passed the work plan. She's not here, but I can't say enough about the coordination and organization that Ann did with all of our member agencies for that work plan. I think the ops committee came up with a fantastic strategy. The advisory technical committee did a great job of aligning their projects to that strategy. And then just the production of the work plan, how easy it is to digest compared to the 1,000-page document that we published last year. We've cut by 80% the size of that document, and then it's so much easier to navigate through the table of contents. I'm so pleased with how that came together, pleased with the support that the board had for the work plan. And as you know, I still have a little bit of a challenge for securing rent for our what I hope to be our new home. But I'm working on that now, and well, it'll be a discussion point at our exec committee, and then a discussion point again at our board of directors. And then last night I had the opportunity to attend San Anselmo Town Council's meeting to present the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. Again, a lot of support. I think there's a lot of excitement about this project. There are some fears that we might go a little bit too heavy-handed with some of the work that we're doing, but I think for the most people are very supportive of the project. In fact, I've received some very complimentary comments from individuals that tend to be very critical of wildfire mitigation work. So I'm very pleased by that. And we're looking forward to hitting the go button on that project. We have our vegetation treatment plan, the CAL FIRE VTP product, almost ready to publish. We're required to publish it 15 days before it goes to the board for approval. So we will meet that deadline and intend to approve the VTP project specific analysis at the June 16th meeting of the board of directors. And then we file it with the Board of Forestry clearinghouse. There we intend to have another public meeting. The first public meeting in March was about the scoping and the environmental compliance that we intended to do. And now that we've gone through that and we're getting ready to work, we're going to have another public meeting in the end of July so we can lay out how we're going to do the work, when and where we're doing the work. So really excited about that. And I love that other member agencies are attaching themselves to that principle, that model that the Central Marin area created to move a project like this forward. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Jennifer.
Thanks, Mark. Are we going to be using, let's see, when I was watching the meeting, I was really struck with Daniel Swain's sort of final comments about the need to use fire. Are we going to be using any fire to fight fire or to create these breaks? Not fight it, but to create these breaks?
Absolutely. But it's really going to be specific to locations. And our fuel loading, fuel situation, especially around homes, is not at a spot where it would be prudent for us to use fire for prescribed fire purposes. Because it would be on the days that we would be able to get the type of consumption that we are looking for in a successful prescribed fire, could easily lead to conditions where we would not be able to contain that prescribed fire. So we look at the project like the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break as what's called an initial point of entry. So we are going to be modifying the fuels that are in there, where then following that, then that could be the time that we bring prescribed fire, because we've lessened that fuel loading and made it a better environment for us to have a successful prescribed fire. That's for areas near the communities. Now, when we get into areas that are further away from the communities, many of our land management partners, Marin Water is planning on some prescribed fires this year. National Park Service stopped for a few years, but they have been one of our more consistent practitioners of prescribed fire. So you'll start seeing more of it in the wildlands or the open spaces. Not necessarily funded by MWPA, but funded through other mechanisms, whether it's from the Coastal Conservancy, CAL FIRE, fire prevention grants. Because right now we're focusing on that built environment. And as we start getting a stronger foothold in the built environment, then we'll start going into the more open space lands.
It seems like there's a real educational opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry, Kingston.
No, sorry. Go ahead. I have a question for Mark. My problem with prescribed burns is I can't figure out the scope of what's going to happen over the next 4 to 5 years. I mean, I've been following the watershed committee for the MMWD, and they're talking about, they're very specific about 350 acres, 8 or 9 projects over the next 5 years. I mean, that doesn't seem to me like it's particularly significant for doing prescribed burns. I mean, if we're going to follow that type of pattern, it doesn't seem like we're going to get much done. I mean, am I off on the size and scope of what's going to be done?
The size and scope that you're talking about is accurate. Again, the fuel loading, especially in the Mount Tam watershed, if we embark upon a large project, it would be really hard to ensure that it stays within what we call prescription. That's why they're called prescribed fires.
Right.
So nibbling away at smaller chunks starts boxing in areas where we could start having points of success to work from, anchor points as we call them, to start getting bigger. So yes, I think you're going to be seeing projects in the area of hundreds of acres rather than thousands of acres. We could go and, just for the sake of numbers, go burn 10,000 acres of grass and brush fairly easily in West Marin, but the return on investment is not great. So we would rather invest our resources where the greatest risk is and get the most value, even though the numbers may not be as large. And that's the concern I have with CAL FIRE's and U.S. Forest Service's mandate for 500,000 acres of prescribed fire.
Right. Not going to happen. Yeah.
Well, besides not going to happen, it motivates people to go focus their efforts to get the quantitative results rather than the qualitative results.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, Max, hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Lucy. Yeah, Mark, my question is, you mentioned going before the San Anselmo Town Council. Do you have to get approval from the councils in the Ross Valley or from the Fire Protection District, or?
We were just doing, they're all informative. It was just a presentation to let the council members and members of their public who may not have seen the other presentations we've done, just to help spread the word.
And do you have then authority to go without having to gain, do you have to get permission from neighbors adjacent and such as well, or?
Absolutely. So the outreach to all the affected properties have been already, that outreach has already occurred.
Great. And is there
Too much of a
resistance
pandemic going on, but
you mentioned some folks who usually are resistant or not resistant on this shaded fuel break. Is that the case with in terms of the neighborhoods, or is that more organized groups, or kind of what sort of, is it neighborhood associations, is it environmental organizations, what sort of folks?
more in the environmental organizations.
Cool. Great.
Okay. I suppose we do open time for public expression if there's anybody here. There probably isn't.
Yes, at this time, there's no public attendees.
So we'll close that option and move on to the consent calendar. So I think we have to give an open time for public expression before the consent items. So once again, we'll open it for public comment and then close it for public comment. And we'll then, we have the recommendation to approve the minutes. Pat.
I don't know how everybody else reads the minutes, but I unfortunately admit to reading them to make sure that when words fall out of my mouth, that they are reflected accurately. And when I was reading these minutes, there's a statement, and it has several these without it being clear what the antecedent is. And I apologize for not sending this to Mark ahead of time, but there's a sentence that says committee member Randolph stated that they are fairly well set for this year. And I had to think in my own head what they are. And I believe that it probably would be better for it to read that committee member Randolph stated that the work plan is fairly well set for this year. And then a couple of sentences further, it says they should use their political capital in a more strategic manner. And I think more correctly, it should say the COC should use its political capital in a more strategic manner. So if we could make those changes, then I would, and I can send these to Mark written out, then I would be very happy with the minutes.
Okay, then do we have a motion to approve as amended by Pat?
Can Pat move?
And I'll second.
Okay,
Just a question, Lucy. I think this is the first meeting I've been absent from. I think Kingston and I were absent, is what the minute said. Should we abstain, or
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain.
okay.
I don't know what our protocol is on that.
That's up to you, but I wasn't there, so I don't think I should vote.
So for those that were there, let's do a roll call.
Member Cole,
Abstain?
member Chu.
Aye.
Member Dilworth, Chair Dilworth,
Aye.
member Pare,
Abstain.
Stain. Member Suggs,
Aye.
member Howard,
Aye.
member Randolph.
Aye.
Passes by 6-2. Thank you.
Okay. So we move on to item 7, committee reports. And if we could keep this relatively brief, because we do have to look at the report, that would be great. So would anybody like to report on a meeting that they were observing?
Yeah.
Kingston.
Yeah, Finance Committee, Bhagwani, or what is her name? Badawi and Associates presented the audit. And it was only a partial audit. There were some things that were missing, which I'll discuss in a second. But the audit numbers that they presented are accurate based on our Larry's and my review of the numbers, as well as discussions with Mark Brown. The Finance Committee was asked to move the audit up to the board of directors. They declined to do so because the things that were missing were the analysis of the internal controls and practices, all right, that are normal parts of an audit. They weren't included in this, and they're going to be coming in at a later date. So the Finance Committee said, please go back to Mark, and we'll consider everything as in one complete package. So we're still waiting for that, and that's, but it's, I think, Larry, would you call that a manager's letter? Yeah, management letter. It's all the internal controls. They want to see if the money is being handled correctly as it moves through the process. And that's our report.
Okay. Rebecca,
So, Pat, I think you're also on these committees, but if you want to speak up for ATC and ops, the majority of those meetings were on the work plan. And the big takeaway that I noticed that was different on this discussion was how much had been cut for core JPA wide work in order to maybe the outcome of that was more money for the local core projects. Mark, is there another term for those?
I'd call them core regions, so we don't mix local.
Thank you.
I know what you're saying, but core regions, I think, is a better way to say it.
Thank you. So the 5 regions had more money to use for for regional projects. And they had expressed that desire the month prior. And I think they were happier with the outcome. At least that was what I heard in the meetings, both of them.
Jennifer, do you have your hand up? Oh. Kingston, you have a hand up, but is that just left over from last time? You're muted. Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
I was at the Board of Directors meeting.
Mhm.
I don't really have any terribly specific comments. It was an extremely long meeting. It was quite astonishing to listen to Anne report on the work
Yeah.
plan. It was just remarkable. And I think everybody there was in awe. And not just to listen to the plan, but also she's just really great the way she presents. I was a little surprised when Mark presented the budget that they wanted to take the funds out for facilities and pending further review with Mark, but Mark is smiling about that. And then I was just absolutely thrilled, and this doesn't really have anything to do with our work, but I was just like beyond thrilled when suddenly I looked at my screen and there was Daniel Swain. So thank you, Mark, or whoever, for making that happen. That was a real thrill.
And reached out to him, and we've already started conversations with him that ESP can host him for a longer seminar, because his message is great.
And he just knows how to deliver the information in such a, I mean, it's really remarkable. And I was going to say earlier about prescribed burn that just in my conversations with people randomly, there's such an opportunity for educating the public on this topic. And, you know, he's a great one for that. So that's all.
I was going to thank you for Jennifer for mentioning about the budget thing, because Mark, I was going to mention in the board meeting, I was astounded that they spent 15 minutes on $125,000 item out of a $20 million budget. And my understanding of when I used to handle budgets is it's a budget. It's not a, we're going to spend this money this way for real. It's, we're thinking about it and we've got this in the budget for it. Thank you. Couldn't they have just left it and then decide later how they're going to, I mean, to spend that long on one item of that amount of money was interesting.
Yeah.
They must have really had a lot of heart in that subject.
Yeah, that was my response. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm with both of you. Okay. All right.
Okay.
37,000 versus 125. I agree. It's nice to save that extra 90 grand, but
Anyway.
yeah.
So are there any other reports from committees or comments? All right, then we'll move on to open time.
Larry has his
Larry,
hand
go
up.
ahead.
I have a comment just going back to the last 3 comments that were made. You know, one of the things I'm still grappling with is how any of these topics have to deal with us as a COC. Because we don't determine how money gets allocated to projects and how they want to redistribute it. Our role is to make sure that it's still being spent within the parameters that are set in the metrics for each of the different project types. You know, the budget has nothing to do with us. And, you know, I guess I'm still grappling with, you know, what's our role?
Well, I would suggest that though technically we're not, we're commenting because we're so involved and we've sat through these meetings that we're interested in this, in the matter. I don't think that we're taking action or proposing any kind of response to it. It's just sharing the information.
I guess once you have a public discussion about it and it's on the record,
Yes.
then where does that leave us vis-a-vis how the public perceives us and how the board perceives us?
That's an interesting question.
So is your thought that we shouldn't be discussing on the record things that aren't in our purview?
Well, there's an inference to anybody who listens to this that it suggests that it is within our purview.
So would it be better to either preface it with not in our purview, but interesting? And here's what I heard, or something, or not to mention it.
I would think it's best not to mention it.
I have my hand up, but I just want to say,
Yeah.
my instinct told me that it wasn't a good thing to mention, but I did it anyway because I'm feeling my way here. I don't know what our role is. And I did sit through this really long meeting and I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I'm just following my instincts because I don't have a clear idea. So a lot of clarification would be really helpful. I can't help thinking we're not the first COC, so there's got to be some guideline out there for me, and maybe you've given it to me and I haven't read it, and I apologize.
Well,
I
we're the
think-
first COC of this type
Mhm.
because we're trying to change it to something that is different than all the other COCs, at least that I'm involved in or have helped create. You know, so I guess one of the things that hopefully we'll be able to introduce the next meeting is at least we have an oversight framework for each of the different subcommittees we have. And that will basically put specific broad tasks that we're supposed to be doing over the course of the year, whether it's for financial oversight, work plan oversight, review, transparency, and then the fourth one being just putting the annual report together.
Max, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was not able, unfortunately, to join for the last board meeting, but just kind of listening here. I mean, I think we've, you know, for Jennifer's information, we've grappled with this now for, you know, a year and a half. We're just coming up. I think June will be our year-and-a-half anniversary of the COC here, and we've had almost entirely the same group. And over the next year, I think we'll start to see new members coming on the COC as folks term out, or you know, as everyone I think knows, this is my last meeting on the COC. So you'll have a new member from Southern Marin. Hopefully in time for the next meeting, right? So, and if not July. So, you know, I think as new people come on, right, we have the bylaws, we have various other documents we've worked on, you know, here's kind of our operating rules and such. But there's a lot, I think, that is not written down, and those things tend to be here's what we don't do, right? What we've written down is what we do. But what we don't do is kind of everything that's not written. And so it could be helpful for you know, as new people come on and as this initial group come off one by one over the next couple of years, to maybe put together something that's not so much a, you know, a document to stick up for everyone to see, but just kind of for almost a training of new members to provide some context. I'm somewhat thinking out loud here, but I think this is a perfect example of that sort of conversation, because I think Larry is right in that, this is a public meeting, it's recorded, there's minutes, taxpayer dollars are paying for the Zoom that we're using, are paying for Lori's time, Mark's time, right? We all don't make money, but having this meeting is taking taxpayer money, and so I think it's important that we kind of know what we're allowed to talk about and do, and then maybe what we don't as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so open time for public expression, if there's anyone there.
Yeah, at this time, there's no one in attendance. Thank you.
Okay, so we close that and move on to action items. There's one item for us to look at tonight, and that is the Citizens Oversight Annual Report, which might give you an idea of what we do look at and what we do discuss. I would like to just preface our conversation about this tonight, which is that I hope we could focus on the sort of the ideas and the issues and not worry too much about wordsmithing or style preferences. We just talk about it and see and get general thoughts, unless, of course, somebody has something in particular they want to say about style, but I'd prefer it if we could just keep it at a higher level. So let's begin. Does anybody would like to begin and to make any comments about the report?
Move to approve.
Oh, okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion before us. Do we approve the 2021 Citizens Oversight Annual Report? It's right in front of you. Yes or no?
And do we need to open it for public?
No, I think we take our vote first, right? Or do we not?
No.
It feels like we should have a little discussion.
Okay, well, if anybody would like to say something, Pat.
Well, if I can interject process wise, I mean, there is no public to have asked for public comment. But after the first and the second, you're still fully open to have discussion as per Rosenberg's rules of order. So feel free to go with your discussion and then you can decide to vote.
Okay, so I'd like to hear from those of you who perhaps are not as familiar with the report as those of us who wrote it. See if anything struck you or you were concerned about.
Just a thank you to everyone who put in time and effort. I think a really good work product.
Oh, good.
I'll second that.
Okay. Well, I would like to make the comment that I thought it was an incredibly educational process for us. We did really get to understand what it is we should be looking at, and we made recommendations that I think will help us get to the meat of the matter much more quickly now that we know what we need. And we now have a model to move forward on. So I'm hoping that next year's report will not take as long and will be easier to produce within a shorter amount of time. So anything else? Pat?
I guess I would just like to comment for those of us who weren't as intimately involved with this process, that it was very, very educational, that it is a great way to learn a lot about what's going on, and that we learned so much in the process and learned what we don't know and what maybe not enough people know. So I encourage everybody to be deeply involved next year.
It's a very good point. Yes. All right then. So, so we do open it for public discussion, or we assume that
There's no public.
there's no public.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
do.
Oh, sorry, Larry, did you want to? Oh, okay. So let's take a vote on it.
Member Cole,
Yes, approve.
Member Chu,
Aye.
Chair Dilworth,
Aye.
Member Pare,
Aye.
Member Suggs,
Aye.
Member Howard,
Aye.
Member Randall,
Aye.
7-0,
Ready.
very much.
Well,
Lucy, if I can say something before we go on to the next agenda item. You know, this work is my passion, but it's also my job, and I'm paid to do this. I want to thank you guys for all the hours that you have put in to this product, to your work with the COC in a volunteer basis. I think you should all be recognized for what you're contributing to your communities. And, you know, whenever I present that one slide that's in some of our presentations that says civic leaders, I'm always sure to point out that to me, civic leaders just aren't the elected officials. It's the people who are civically involved in providing a leadership role in their communities. And I think you all meet that definition.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so information items.
So Lucy, I think it's probably good for those of us who've not been intimately involved to know that now this will go to the graphic person to make it look good.
Right, it's still subject to an amendment by when the audit comes in, full audit.
So, I mean, we didn't finalize this, but the assumption that I was going on was that once the audit comes out, we will issue a one set, assuming, of course, that it doesn't create any issues that we feel strongly about. We will probably just issue a report, another report, simply saying the audit is being complete and thorough, and we approve it. And that will be, you know, that'll be it, unless anybody else feels that that we would need to do more than that.
Well, the only other thing you could do is to delay everything until it's, you know, I don't, we just don't know when they're going to be finished.
Yeah.
Please don't do that. I'm sorry. Yes. All right.
I think as a matter of process, we're going to need to bifurcate the two in future years if
Yeah.
we want to try and get the
Yeah.
COC annual report done by the end of the calendar year.
Yes.
Mhm.
Good.
Lesson learned. Yeah.
So do we have any information items?
I would like to mention what Max has already mentioned. This is his last meeting as a COC member. I want to thank you, Max, for the time and energy that you put into this. Congratulate you again on your appointment to the Mill Valley Council. And I look forward to interacting with you in that forum.
Yes,
Thank you,
indeed.
Mark. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you. Thank you, Max.
And I'll just say this group has been fantastic, and it's been an honor to serve with all of you for a year and a half and get to be on the bylaws subcommittee and work plan subcommittee and get to work with all of you on this important work. I'll be it won't be official until after, but in talking with the council member who will almost assuredly be our next mayor, I'll be an alternate to the MWPA. Sashi's our rep, and Sashi will be on the council for at least the next 2 years, but I'll be her alternate, as well as being our liaison to our Emergency Preparedness Commission in Mill Valley, which I currently chair and will be dropping off of as well. An alternate on the Southern Marin Paramedic Board, the rep to Bay Wave for sea level rise planning, and the rep to kind of the liaison to CERT for Southern Marin as well. So emergency preparedness, I'll kind of be taking on for the council. So you'll be seeing lots of me in this space, even if I'm not on the COC.
We look forward to it. Oh, Pat.
Just information item for those of you who have missed all the tons of advertising. I encourage everybody to come to Ember Stomp on Saturday. I see Mark shaking his head, and I know he will be there. And food trucks, bands, goats, Ember House, and a fire smart landscape. So everybody come and learn more about fire smart landscaping and how to harden your home.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Go lie.
And Dick Spotswood said he'll be there with his 3 grandchildren.
That's right.
All right then. Any committee members requesting future agenda items?
Well, what are we gonna do something? Larry, do you want to put something on there about the role of this and when they go back to this again?
Yeah, I mean, Lucy, do you think we can complete the other 3 committees by the next meeting?
Complete their work or complete getting
just-
them constituted?
Draft of the framework?
Yeah.
I would seem like, yes, the basics, yes. So that would be a good point. So we would have some document to produce for discussion, outlining schedule and process for producing a report.
Yeah, we really should wrap this up by the end of July, because if, staff is going to start to close the books, usually they need a month or 6 weeks or so, then that data can be handed off to us immediately, as opposed to waiting like the last time until it was handed off also to the auditors.
Yes. Good. I think that will keep us organized. Yes, Max.
Yeah, well, I won't be here. Hopefully someone else will be. And so you may want to assign the new member, whether it's, I don't know, Mark, if you know the timeline on appointing someone, but if they're here in June, you might want to assign them committees.
Yeah, their appointment would be on June 16th so that would hopefully place them in time to attend the June COC meeting.
Great.
I'm sorry, Larry, go ahead.
Oh, you can finish what you're saying. I had another agenda item to suggest.
What I was going to suggest, Lucy, was the committee expressed a desire for the election for the new chair or the new vice chair to be in June rather than July to kind of speed up the process and make it easier on that July meeting. So with your concurrence, we can add that to the June meeting.
Yes, good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Just the vice chair?
Just the vice chair.
Okay, thank you.
Making an assumption there.
No, we're not.
No.
It's in the bylaws that it's an automatic appointment and 6 weeks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, knew I should have read those.
Well, you got plenty of time.
Okay, well, then everybody, I will proceed to adjournment. Thank you very much for your time this evening. We're adjourned.
Thanks. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Bye, Max.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Max.
Thank you, Max.
Around.
Thank you, guys. Take care.